Hey, Grant, welcome to the call. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I'm feeling real good.
There you go. Fantastic. So, to provide a little bit of context for all the listeners, share with us who is Grant Parr?
Who is Graham, man? That's a big question, man, or maybe a big answer. I'm a mental performance coach, and I work with athletes, teams, and athletes, teams, and coaches, and also executives on providing mental skills training. So basically, I'm putting in a process in place that's going to allow them to be more in control of their thoughts and emotions,
hmm
and allow them to be the best version of themselves in that moment.
Okay. How important is the mind game? I mean, that's pretty much the world you live in, right? But you work with a lot of athletes, so there's a physical aspect to it. But,
Yeah.
after talking with like Navy SEALs, athletes, I think the mind game is a whole lot tougher
Yeah,
to overcome
it is.
than just lifting up some weights.
It's huge, and I'll tell you, with my background as an athlete, I played quarterback for 13 years. I played multiple sports, but
Wow.
I'll tell you what, my best game, even
hmm
though that I was a really good quarterback, and I say that from a confident perspective, my best game was because I had a mental game, and my worst game I've ever played in my life is because I didn't have a mental game. So I don't care how great you are, it's what you do in that moment. And then what are
hmm
you doing preparing yourself for the moment? So the mental game it's huge. But I will add this. If you want if you want a mental game, if you
hmm
want to have a really good mindset, it all starts with the breath. You really have to have a relationship with your breath.
Controlling your breathing.
Yeah, have a relationship with it.
Can you dive a little more into that?
Yeah. And a lot of people ask me that too. They're like, what do you mean, like having a relationship with your breath? Because like right now, you and I are breathing.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is when we get into it, like really observing your breath. We're so distracted. Like we have so many things distracting our life, especially in society now, that all I'm going to ask you is for you to actually 3 to 5, maybe 7 times a day, get in your breath and get out of it. Meaning, get into a very conscious breath for 2 to 3, maybe 5 seconds,
hmm
and let go and move on. But I want you to stop everything. And you need to find times when you do that, whether if it's in the shower, whether it's you're looking at social media, or you're reading a book, when you're eating food, lunchtime, walking from meeting to meeting, classroom to classroom. Find these pockets of time where you can get really present,
hmm
get what your feet are, and have that relationship because there's going to be a moment. And I had an awesome person on my podcast today talking to me about them. He was so prepared and then wasn't prepared, and because he lost his breath, and he said he didn't have a relationship with his breath. But there's just going to be times in our lives where,
hmm
as much as we're prepared, man, if we're not in our breath, if we're not leading with our breath, like leading people, if we're not doing breathing work, intentional work before exercise or before we're going to perform, we're just hoping, man. We're just hoping that things go well. And I think a breath just allows us to get really, really present and very conscious.
So are you kind of using that same relation to so for football, right? Like that's why the team is out on the field 2 hours before the game starts. Like they're physically getting themselves in the game. They're doing their calisthenics. They're doing their some passing drills, tackling drills, whatever it is. They're getting their muscles to get that memory back to being present, so that way they're ready by the time kickoff comes. Is that kind of a good correlation or an example of what you
Well,
mean by using your breath?
I think it's even before that. I mean, if we're going to use the context of sport and
Uh huh.
football, at least, I think what I want to do is I want us to get us in our breath, get in our routine.
hmm
If we're breathing, right, especially when you're getting prepared, and I love this statement, man, your preparation is your separation.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Like when we get prepared, we're separating ourselves from self-doubt. We're separating ourselves from our opponents. We are getting prepared mentally, emotionally. And if we're getting into our breath, like before we even go out to warm up, we're breathing, we're visualizing, and we
Yep.
have self-talk. All right. So I have this thing that I call do your BVT: breathe, visualize, and talk.
hmm
So we breathe, we visualize, and then we talk our way in the direction we want to go. Like, let's go. I can do this. I'm gonna light it up today. Whatever it is. you say that and you get yourself in the process. That's getting into your breath. That's
Yeah.
actually getting into being present. Now, when you go out there and you're warming up and you're doing your drills, between each drill, just drop into your breath, man. Start
Yeah.
talking to yourself. Get into your rhythm, right? And so, so it's going to look differently for everyone. Everyone's going to have their
Yeah.
own routine, right? But as far as getting into your breath, and I can tell you about some crazy situations happened to me in my life outside of athletics.
Uh-huh.
That the breath saved me. Like it saved me.
Give us an
So,
example.
so I call it the pit bull story. This happened to me a couple years
This is
ago.
gonna be
It was
fun.
on a, yeah, this is a good one. I literally, I was walking my two little dogs, and I was a Saturday morning, and I live in San Francisco, so behind my house is a beautiful trail, and you can literally see this awesome view of the Bay Bridge, the bay, and it's like directly right across from Oakland.
Okay.
So Saturday morning, it was just beautiful. I have my coffee. I'm blissed out. I'm in my breath. I'm literally like, because the grass on this hill looked cool, and I was just feeling really good. And as my dogs were sniffing, as we were walking, up on the about 50 yards up on the hill to my left, there was this about 100-pound pit bull
Wow.
unleashed. Now,
Okay.
again, pit bulls are beautiful dogs. I think they
Oh, they're
do get a bad
cuddly.
rap.
They're loving
Yeah,
and
but
cuddly. They're also very protective.
that too, for sure. But when you have 100-pound dog, pit bull, that's unleashed, right,
Uh-huh.
and in its stance, instantly, I'm thinking generally, for me at least, you get a little scared.
You're socially
And
conditioned to think this thing's about ready to rip my leg off.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that there's a lot of things, and I'll talk about my process, but as soon as I saw an unleashed pit bull that was in its stance, it wasn't sniffing around. It was literally, it saw my dogs and it saw me. I went right into my breath. I took a deep breath and I told myself in my mind, I go, everything's okay. I took another breath. I told myself everything's okay. And guess what happened next?
Everything was okay.
That pit bull took off, man. It came streaming down that hill. Now my dogs, they don't see it because they're down low and they're sniffing around and everything, and they're distracted by smells. And as this dog came and it came down, all I did is I sat there in my breath. I sat in the fire. Now this is where I call it in my book. I call this a conquering the emotional hurricane,
Okay.
right? And so what happens in the eye of the hurricane? It's calm.
Yeah.
So no matter what, we are faced as humans, we have internal emotional hurricanes and external every day. We
Yes.
just do. We're faced by them.
Yeah.
So are we going to actually train ourselves to get in our breath so we can sit in the middle of it and conquer it? Sitting in the fire, sitting in the middle of the hurricane, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So by getting in my breath and getting in my self-talk, I allowed myself to sit in the very uncomfortable situation because I had options, right? I could make decisions. I could have ran.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know me, but I'm not that fast, right?
You could run, but
And
it's more than likely the dog's going to catch you. They're kind of
exactly.
built to run.
Exactly. Or I could have picked up my two dogs and I could have pulled them up and protected them. But what am I doing with that decision?
Yeah.
I'm inviting that dog to either bite my arm or bite my dog's,
Yeah.
right? So that's not good. You know, and again, this is something that is so funny because I share this story and I share this story with athletes and groups of people, and some people are like, well, you have a decision to beat up the dog, and I was like, okay, that's a decision, but guess what? I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I don't do that. Second of all, there's no way that I'm going to win in a fight with a pit bull.
You're probably not going to.
It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. So what I did in that moment is, as they were growling at each other, I literally had to sit there and I went into my puppy talk and I basically said, it's okay, guys, it's all right. And I went into my breath, it's all right, it's okay. And I sat there for like 15 seconds by just talking the situation down, but I wasn't showing any emotion. I wasn't scared because my breath was allowing me to be centered. So after 15, 20 plus seconds, the pit bull just got uninterested and just turned away.
Yeah.
And as it turned away, I turned away and I pulled on the leashes to bring my dogs with me, and my knees were about to buckle. Like I literally was like, oh, whoa, because it all happened so fast, right?
Yeah.
So it was that moment in my life where I was like, wow, the power of the breath. Like I sat in a very with adversity. I sat because I could be talking to you right now with a different outcome,
Yeah.
something that maybe scars on my who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I at that moment in my life it was like, wow, man, I'm so glad that I actually practice breathing. I have a breathing practice. I have intentional breathing practice every day, and it saved me in that moment.
No, that's awesome. That's something that I kind of used to do with my kids. With like, if something happened and they're getting all hysterical and it's like the first thing I'm doing is like control your breathing, like calm
Yeah,
down. Like you're
yeah,
not gonna think if you're like
totally.
like you're just suffocating your brain right now. Like
Yeah,
calm your
yeah,
brain,
you're stressing it out.
yeah, like calm your brain down because the slower you breathe, like force yourself to breathe slower, then it's gonna slow your heart rate down. It's gonna slow your thinking process down so that way you can think straight.
Yeah,
It's like,
you
did
know,
your arm fall off now? No, look, it's not even bleeding. So what are you
right,
screaming about? Oh, I don't know.
right.
Well, so what's with the, freaking out like, and
Yeah,
but it's just, but it was that's just something that it's just having studied, not necessarily studied breathing, but just kind of understanding the importance of not overreacting in a situation when you don't need to overreact.
yeah.
But all that comes in, it's
I
right in between your ears.
for sure, and I always say this with breath, and this process or this reaction happens really quick.
Mm-hmm.
When you have your breath, you have your mind, and when you have your mind, you have your body, right? So from a physiology standpoint, it's a little bit different because the brain kind of controls everything first, right? It's the brain, it's the center.
Yep.
But get into your breath so you can have your mind. If you have your mind, you have clarity.
Yeah.
You actually make decisions with your body, whether if that's taking your body in a certain situation or your body language. But you can get that process down like that. As soon as you get your breath, you have your mind, then you have your body.
Yep.
And so, and I work with athletes all the time, especially in the midst of the game where they're emotional and they're either pissed off or they want to cry, they feel hurt, they feel embarrassed, the fear of failure setting in, and they want to tell you so bad why they're hurting in the moment or why they're upset, but they can't
Yep.
because their breath. And so I always tell them, I'm not talking to you till you get your breath. And it's so funny when they just go, okay, and they make that decision within 3 seconds, 5 seconds, boom.
They're
They're
there.
like, okay, I'm willing to tell you my feelings. And it's crazy. And I love it though. I love seeing that progression. And like you're saying, you have
Mm-hmm.
that hyperventilating breath. I call it survival breathing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like sometimes you need to hold on to your breath and make it real uncomfortable so your body can grab onto that oxygen,
Yeah.
right? But it's
like
hard
you're
to train yourself. You need to train
It's like you're
yourself.
pushing it all out before it can even get into your brain. Like, what do you like? You're suffocating
Yeah,
your brain when you do that. You're not
yeah.
gonna think straight. So with all of this, obviously there was a lot of studying and practice just in your personal life that went into this. When did it kind of really take into effect of becoming a mental performance coach and really helping
So
others hone the skill? Because it's different figuring it out for yourself and learning how to do it for yourself.
yeah,
But then it's a whole different thing when you're trying to like really connect with someone in a level for them to be able to understand it. Because like it's like I can tell you what to do, but really making it relatable for you is a whole different story than me just telling you, "Hey, control your breath."
yeah. Absolutely. And I think with that, with what you're saying, it's really, really important with every single client that I work with is to build that trust and rapport. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's so much content and there's so many strategies and interventions that I know that are great and that would
Yeah.
help the athlete or the performer, but I need to get to know them first. I need to know their language and I need to know their boundaries so I can actually know how to connect with them.
Well,
And that's
yeah,
a skill.
you're asking them to be vulnerable with you.
100%.
You know,
100%.
because I'm letting all my
Yeah.
walls down now, and I don't like letting my walls down. That's why they're up. And so
Yeah,
you're saying I need
exactly.
to let my walls down with you? I don't know you yet. you know?
Exactly. Exactly. But that's the cool thing about vulnerability, and that's where we in society, again,
hmm
generally speaking, that word, it's a hot word now, but it's before though, when I was growing up, being vulnerable was a weak thing. And I mean now vulnerability is strength. It's courage. It's bravery. And so when I feel that there's someone that is reluctant and doesn't want to be as vulnerable, then I share with them vulnerability stories, antidotes of not only people being vulnerable in life and how it changed them, but
yeah,
how if it's an athlete, how you be vulnerable with your play. Even when stuff's not going well, how do you still trust yourself and be vulnerable with your play?
yeah.
So yeah.
And a lot of people, like, I know how you said that we were talking a little bit, and you have, social media and all those platforms. A lot of people, they let that get to them too, thinking that there's some sort of competition where it's like, oh, I need to uphold my, status, air quote, of, being this person or this type of person and fitting this profile. And it's like, you realize the majority of the crap you see on there is fake, right? Like, it's like you're meeting that person's representative. Like, that's like the person you meet when you go out with somebody on the first date. Like, you're not meeting them, you're meeting their representative. You know what I mean? And it's like, just stop, because it's kind of when you go back to that movie 8 Mile, right, with Eminem. At
Yeah.
the end of the movie, when he's in that final rap battle, he spends his entire time completely just talking trash about everything negative about him. And then when it came time for the other guy to start talking and rapping and stuff like that, the guy had nothing to say, because
Right.
everything that he would do is like to like down speak negatively about the other person and like call out all the whatever's going wrong with the guy's life or whatever. But he did it to
Yeah.
himself. Like, he just was like, I'm gonna be vulnerable. I'm gonna put it all out there. Now what do you have to say?
Yeah.
Oh, nothing. There's nothing you can say to me. Why? Because I already said it. You know.
Beat him to the punch.
Yeah, and it's like it gives you a sense of control over your life when you do that, especially with social media. It's like I almost want somebody to just like pick up your phone and do a 30-second video and just, here is everything going wrong in my life. And then
Right.
see how free you're
The
going to be.
real.
See how free you're going to
Yeah.
be right after that. And how many more connections you're going to get after that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going through this. Oh my gosh, like I'm going through that. How are you talking about this? What are you doing? And, and then it's going to dive into deeper conversation. Whether or not they're ready for that is a whole different story. But I think people
Right.
need to understand a difference between what's real and what's not. And social media has a really big effect on, blinding people with reality.
I think it can, and I think that, how are we really seeing the authentic person,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think from another angle of social media, which I deal with all the time, being a mental performance coach with athletes, when you think of social media, it's a good thing and it's also a bad thing. And
Yeah.
when you think about the tool itself, I mean, it can share incredible things that happen in the world of sports, like beautiful things,
Oh,
like
yeah.
cool things, right? But the stress and the pressure that athletes, especially I think at the high school level, that they deal with is they can be exploited within seconds. Reputation, their opportunities to get a scholarship can be like that.
Yep.
So when you have a tool that makes you look really good but can also make you look bad, there's a lot of pressure that these kids are dealing with. And so we have to talk about that. We have to have these kids to be vulnerable about that pressure, or you just have the kids not even plug into it. Like,
Yeah.
because we talk about stuff, what can you control, what you can't control. That's one thing you can't control. Like, you can control your own content, putting it out there.
Yep.
That's it. But anything outside of that, you have no control of it.
Yeah, it's neutral. The internet's neutral. It's just like money. There's no such thing as like an evil dollar. It's just, was that dollar used for good or bad?
Yeah.
It's just it's neutral. It's the internet. The internet browser didn't search something positive or negative by itself.
Right.
It's what did you type into it? And so it's the same thing with these high school athletes who are still young and still trying to really figure out who they are as individuals. It can be very overwhelming, but I think a lot of that's going to come down to, people like you helping the coaches understand this and be like, hey, yes, social media can be a very fun platform. You guys are young, have fun with it, be yourself. But at the same time, realize that there's a much bigger picture that's going to go on with this. If pursuing this sport is your passion, the owner of a professional team, they're going to dissect everything. They
Everything.
have teams of people to do this, and they're smarter than you.
Oh yeah. I mean, look at it. Look at Antonio Brown. I mean, he had so many opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and all he needed to do, being at the Patriots, was to literally not get on social media and talk to his accuser. Like, don't do that. Like, just don't
Just
do
shut
that.
up and
And he did.
play the game.
Yeah, and he just couldn't help himself. And that's the thing. It's like, all right, you made a choice. You controlled that choice. You've had
Mm-hmm.
so many opportunities, and and he's had a lot of negative backlash
Mm-hmm.
on social media. So it's just, again, the tool can be great. Social media can be great. It can also work against you. And I'll say this: I think as an athlete, Antonio Brown is like he's magical as a wide
Yeah.
receiver. But what he does outside outside the football
Once
field,
he's
I
off the
can't
field.
control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings me to a really great question that just pops into my head is, so after you make the mistake, after you make the bad decision, and hindsight is 2020, right? And so
Yeah.
after you make the mistake, what's the best approach to that situation? Because I'm sure you deal with it all the time, right? Because nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, but I didn't realize I shouldn't have done it till after I did it. Or I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I couldn't help it. I had to do it, to give
Right.
myself like that 5 seconds of like decompression from my vent session or whatever it is. How are you
Right.
coaching somebody after they make the mistake? What are some of the first steps, somebody can take from this?
So I think it's a great question. For me, all my athletes, I always have the discussion with them, their relationship with failure. And when I say that, it's also the relationship with success,
Mm-hmm.
because they go hand in hand.
Yep.
Like, we all know now, if you want to be successful, right, you got to fail.
Success is paved on the brick road of failures.
Yeah, for sure. And then energetically, when you think about it, winning and succeeding is above us. Like, we want to go win, right?
Mm-hmm.
The line of success is either in front of us or above us. And when we lose or fail, right,
Yeah.
it's downward. Okay.
Yep.
So
Take it as a lesson.
what I'm teaching, yeah. So what I'm teaching with athletes and performers in any domain is to have a different relationship with failing. So failing is feedback. Failing is informative.
Yeah.
So you have a choice in the moment to practice. When you fail, try to actually plug into the feedback instead of the emotion. Now, again, I want you to be human. If you fail, I don't want you to be a robot. But the quicker that you can actually stay out of the emotional charge of failing, that will put you in a better and more control. But as humans, when we do plug into failing and then being embarrassed and the fear of failure, all this stuff that happens, it generally paralyzes you. And basically, this is kind of funny, and every athlete gets a chuckle when I say this, but when someone doesn't know how to let go of a mistake during their performance, I call it the emotional bag of shit.
Yeah.
So if you're not dealing with the emotions and you're actually still playing that game with that mistake and you haven't let go of it or haven't gotten the lesson from it, that bag of shit, emotional bag of shit, gets bigger and stinkier and heavier. Your body language changes. You lose a little bit of your breath. You get frustrated. Yeah. And the whole goal of playing sports and performing is to be free and joyous and confident, right? Yeah. So I teach them to have a different relationship. So I basically say, instead of failing down, right, let's fail up. Let's fail forward. Let's fail forward. Fast and move on.
Yeah, I like the way Les Brown says it. It was like, if you're gonna fall down, make sure you fall on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up.
Yeah.
You totally. Know, it's like, why? Because I'm always looking up. I'm not looking down. Like, sure, if I'm falling, I'm getting right back up and gonna keep going. You know, exactly. If you're going through hell, keep going. You know,
yeah.
If you're going through hell, keep going.
And there's an art of getting up. You know, it's like when you think of a lot of sports where, football, you get tackled, you fall down. You know, when you're skateboarding, geez, you're always falling down to perfect some of these moves. So, and there's other sports out there as well, but we've got to learn how to, if the mistake is getting us to the ground, there's an art of getting back up. And that builds, grits and resiliency and mental toughness and all these great sports psychology words, but it does.
Yep.
Like, you need to teach yourself how to, in the moment, deal with failure, look adversity in the face, and get back up.
Love it. And I know I want to make sure you have enough time to get to your next appointment. So real quick, if you want to spend a few minutes sharing with the listeners on where they can find you, your website, your Instagram, all of the good fun stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, you can check out all of my content at Game Face Performance, which is my website. If you want to buy my book, you can actually find it on my website or at Amazon, and that's called The Next One Up Mindset: How to Prepare for the Unknown. If you want to check me out on IG and Twitter, the handle is GFP Mindset, and it stands for Game Face Performance Mindset. So GFP Mindset. On Facebook, it's Game Face Performance, and if you want to check me out on LinkedIn, you can check me out as Grant Parr.
Love it. That was a fantastic call, and hopefully everybody listening to it shares it with everybody that they know, because we can finally combat this little epidemic called entitlement that seems to be growing.
Yep, it's there for sure.
As you can tell, I am not for it.
Yep, I feel you.
Alrighty, sir. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
Cool.
Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. I know a bunch of you haven't subscribed yet. Also, don't forget to follow me on social. You can look me up, The Real Jeff Bill. Also on Instagram, we have our Blast Talks podcast page. Make sure you subscribe and follow both of those accounts to make sure you're staying up to date on the new content, all that fun stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.